what if I told you that an organization or you in your organization can increase productivity, on-time delivery rates, equipment reliability, and reduce all the chaos that manufacturers dealing with on a daily basis using the same resources? So my story takes me to somewhere in spring of 2020. A new president of a large manufacturing organization. Actually, it's been a manufacturing business in the family, so he was the 5th generation president. He seen huge potential for his business, and he wanted to make a name for himself. The business seen substantial growth, tremendous growth. The business has been around for 90 years, but the problem is that for the last 40 years, nothing changed. They plateaued at a certain point, and no matter what they did, they didn't see any growth opportunities. And it's not like they didn't try. Sorry about that. There we go. And it's not like they didn't try. They used a lot of advice. They went to Six Sigma black belts for advice. They went to Lean practitioners for advice. They used a lot of experts with fancy certifications and what not under their belt. However, they didn't see the results. They were promised a lot of opportunities for growth. They were promised a lot. They were promised the world. But when they looked at the results year to year, they haven't seen an increase in profits. And that was a huge problem for the president. He wanted to make a name for himself. He wanted to make a change. So he partnered with a local MEP. Now, that was in Pennsylvania. So he partnered with a local MEP, and the local MEP recommended for the president to go to an organizational excellence workshop. An organizational excellence workshop hosted by Future State Engineering. Actually, some of those concepts I'm going to be discussing in today's seminar, but this workshop, it usually takes about a day, so I wouldn't be able to discuss all the concepts in this 1 hour, but some of them for sure. And he loved it. So he took his executive team to that workshop. He loved the concepts. He loved the ideas. And he thought that he can introduce those concepts into his business. So now we fast forward to February of 2021. And when we go to the plant floor, we see a lot of undesirable effects. We call them undesirable effects. So do you have any of these effects, or are you familiar with any of these effects on the screen in your organization? Does it sound similar? So if it does, you're not the only ones. Actually, every client we work with, they have similar problems. And this company in Pennsylvania wasn't an exception. They had all those problems. We walked the plant floor. Oh my God, there is so much work in process inventory everywhere. So much work in process inventory that some of the workstations, we couldn't even see some of the workstations. The operators were buried. So what's it called? The work orders. When it's work in process, they put those pieces of metal into a tub. And they had lots of tubs everywhere on the plant floor. So the workstations were buried in this inventory. Complete unorganized environment, or that's what we've seen. We didn't think there is an organization. So when we went to interview the operators, we asked them, so how do you know which work order to prioritize? How do you know which work order is the first one to work on? How would you know? And the operator tells us, oh, I just work on the first one that comes here. Aha, okay, that's an interesting answer, but when in a few other slides, I'll explain which work orders they actually worked on. But that was the answer. The first one, we said, okay, we got the answer. At the same time, the equipment was absolutely unreliable. They didn't have really a prioritization. And then when the plant manager goes, we see him screaming, that is a priority work order. Oh no, this is a priority work order. Now that is a priority work order. So based on the customers that screams the loudest, that would be the priority work order. That was the environment. So imagine the firefighting, the chaos, the lack of organization, the lack of flow in the manufacturing plants. Imagine that. So imagine this chaos. And I just described you a regular year for this manufacturer, a regular day in a regular year. Now remember, 2021, we also had a COVID situation. So there were extra problems, extra chaos, which COVID brought us. Supply chain unreliability, high cost of material, and what about the labor pool? Slim to none. Very limited resources. They were actually operating with 15% less resources that their normal staffing levels would be. However, we at Future State Engineering, we said we can improve tremendously your plant using the same resources and without substantial investments. So how did we do that? Now, before I answer this question, let me introduce myself and Future State Engineering. So my name is Pavel Kubiarzin, and I'm part of the Future State Engineering team. What we do, we help manufacturing organizations achieve a decisive competitive edge in their market. How do we do that? So first of all, we understand that any organization, any manufacturer have a great product that they want to offer to the market. They know that if they are able to offer this product to their market faster, better customer service, on time and in full, so that they're going to be deemed as a reliable supplier with exceptional customer service and exceptional quality, they know that if they're able to supply this product better, faster to the market, their customers are going to succeed. So I'm sure when a manufacturer comes to their plant floor and they see that and they have to deal with all this daily firefighting chaos, and they see these mountains of inventory everywhere, and now when they're talking to the customer, they cannot even guarantee that it will be delivered this year, but they have to say 2023 is when you're going to get it. Or we're actually working with some clients, their production lead time is over 50 weeks. So I'm sure that those manufacturers, I'm sure you as a manufacturer are not feeling great about it, because you know that the product you're delivering is providing great value to our customers. So what do? When we come to an organization, we use a different method of improving the flow inside the organization, different concepts. We understand that when you have to deal with all those firefighting activities and all these problems on the floor, you really don't have the time to update your processes, to give the right training to your associates, and make sure that you are able to workflows, this work in process inventory, in the best possible way to reduce your lead times. So what we do, like I said, we're using the same resources to help you achieve that edge, but we just do it a little differently. So first of all, what is organizational excellence? What is organizational excellence? Organizational excellence starts with the customer. The customers have needs, different needs. Different customers have different needs. They will go to your organization because they know your organization is the best out there to provide those needs. Now they're going to go again to your organization if they were satisfied with the service and the product they got from the organization. And the better the product, the better the service, the more chances there are that they're going to be a returning customer. They're going to come over again and again and again. What does it mean? It means that they see value in your organization and the service, the product that you are providing. So how can an organization, how can a manufacturer provide more value to the client compared to the competitors? Well, inside the organization, we see an organization as a system. Inside every system, there is processes. processes that are not siloed, processes that are interrelated and interdependent. Over here, we see three main categories inside the organization: finance, marketing and sales, and operations. Then we have the leadership role. The leadership role is to make sure that those functions are not siloed, but working in alignment with each other, working in alignment with each other. And the way those functions working better in alignment with each other, the more chances you have to provide exceptional value to the customers. Now, there are also different levels of competitive advantage. Oops. The first level of competitive advantage is level 1, it's price. And that's where many organizations compete on, is the price. What I call it is the red bloody ocean of competition. Why do I call it this way? Because you don't really have an advantage when you're competing on price. Especially now with the technological edge, with all the computer algorithms, as soon as the price, somebody goes down on the price, automatically it kicks in and the competitor, and they do a price matching. So it's not really an advantage. The time to replicate for competitors this kind of advantage, nowadays it can take seconds. The second level of competitive advantage is quality. Now, quality is not perceived the same as it used to be perceived 50 years ago. Quality is different now. Now, quality is something the customer expects. So it's still, you are still in the red ocean when you're competing with quality. Maybe it doesn't take seconds for the competitors to replicate, but it might take a few weeks, and a competitor will come up with the same quality product or even better. So that's also another great competitive advantage. Now, the next level, we'll have changing a deep-rooted policy. So remember in my story, I was talking about lots of mountains of work in process inventory on the floor. And we asked the operator, so how do you know which work order is a priority? How do you know which work order you should focus on? How does the operator know? Or what prioritization in the operator head there is to know which work order is supposed to work on first? So once we start looking into the business, understanding what kind of measurements the business has in place, we're starting to understand what work orders the operators work on first. In this case, it was the machining department operator. And when I'm talking about measurements, many times manufacturers have different measurements, different policies in place. And the traditional measurements or the traditional approach that many manufacturers have is we have to make sure every process is busy. We got to make sure that every process is fully utilized. That's usually what everybody believes. Many manufacturers that we go to believing that I have to keep all my resources 100% utilized. I'm paying them for 8 hours. I want them to produce for 8 hours. It doesn't even matter if the market needs this product. I want them to be busy. And it's a huge mistake that many manufacturers do. We say we would rather the operator don't produce anything that produces the stuff the customer doesn't need. So in this specific company, actually had a measurement in place where every department was measured on how much can they produce. Every department in isolation. So let's assume, or what really was, is they had the first operation upstream was forging. Then we went to machining, then we went to heat treat, then we went to assembly. So let's say we have 4 major departments. Every department is measured on how many units per hour, per day, per week, per period the department can produce. That's a measurement. So if you ask the machining operator that is sitting on a mountain of inventory, which work order would you work on first? Now, the machining operator knows that the measurement for him, he needs to be busy. He needs to produce something. He is actually, it's actually his well-being. If he produces more, he's going to get a bonus pay. So every period they're getting a bonus pay based on how many hours they produce and how much they produced. So if they're above a certain threshold, they'll get $3, $4, $2 extra an hour for, let's say, the last 80 hours. So the operator knows, first of all, I don't want to get in trouble because if I'm not producing enough, my boss might come and tell me, what are you doing? And second of all, I'm going to get paid more if I produce more. So now we have many different work orders in front of this operator. One work order he knows is going to be hard to produce. Another work order, it's an easy one he can produce. He can produce two. He can produce double of the easy ones. And if he work on the hard one, the easy one, he can produce ×2. And then there is another work order that the customer needs. Which work order do you think the operator will choose to work on? I think we all know the answer, right? Of course, the easy one. We practice in our methodologies, we practice a lot of theory of constraints. We don't like to call ourselves strictly theory of constraints practitioners because we don't want to be associated ourselves, oh, these guys are just TOC. No, because Lean, Six Sigma has a lot of really good tools that we use all the time. It's just depending on the situation, depending on what we need to achieve, that would be the tools that we use. But to me, TOC is like an umbrella of all the concepts. Inside TOC, we can find Lean, we can find Six Sigma. That's the way I see it, at least. So Eli Goldratt, he is the developer of theory of constraint. He had a quote, a perfect quote for this occasion. And the quote goes like that: tell me how you will measure me, and I will tell you how I will behave. If you measure me in an illogical manner, don't complain about illogical behavior. So in this situation, it goes further than that. Remember, the first process upstream was forging. And a forging, let's say the customer demand is for 2,000 pieces. Now, forging operation, automatically they double the size. So they'll do 4,000 pieces. Why? Because they hate changeovers. Changeovers is evil. Because changeover, you're not busy, you're not producing. So they'll do 4,000. So we are asking them, so what are you going to do with that 2,000 extra pieces? We'll use it eventually. Okay. What if it's the easy part? What if it's an easier part to produce? They'll double it again. So now we have 8,000 pieces. Remember, the customer needs 2,000 pieces. We're going to do 8,000 pieces. So basically, forging is dictating how much inventory the plant is going to have. And now we flushing down the plant 6,000 pieces that nobody needs. And also we provoking the same behavior for the other processes. So now everybody going to be choosing those easy jobs. The customer probably needs the harder parts, and they want shorter lead times. When we started this project, they were sitting on 15 weeks of production lead time. 15 weeks. Another funny thing that was happening there, any rules, any policies they had went null if it was a large customer. For them, a large customer was Home Depot. So if it's a Home Depot work order, what we call it, the effect of cannibalism was taking place. Basically, we gotta make sure Home Depot work order is 100% complete. So now we're gonna start stealing from other work orders just to make sure we have the right amount of inventory for the Home Depot work order. Because those big clients have their specific needs. And for Home Depot, it was, if you miss even one line item, I'm gonna cancel the whole order. So where do we start? Where do we start with creating a change in our organization? Where do we start to create this excellence? So the first thing we need to do is we need to change our mindset. We need to think, how can we achieve a decisive competitive edge. Maybe the things we were doing for the past 50 years are not the right things to be doing now. That's another thing we hear a lot from our clients. So why are you doing it this way? Oh, I was doing it for the past 50 years. Aha. You don't think anything changed in the last 50 years that maybe we need to change? Big thing is to make sure that when we're working, we are working to the customer demand. And our measurements are measuring our employees towards the customer demand. So organizational excellence, meaning we have a decisive competitive edge in the industry that no other customer, no other client, no other competitor can easily replicate. So we start with system thinking. We need to think of our organization as a system, like I said, a system which has interrelated and interdependent processes. None of those processes are coming in isolation. A change in one process is going to create positive or negative effects in a system. I like to think about an organization as a living organism. Everything is interrelated and interconnected. Let's say our human body. Everything is interrelated and interconnected. Our organs. The better we feel, the better the organs are working in sync with each other. But if I take my hand, for example, it will pick up something. But if we take the hand in isolation, the hand wouldn't do anything. Same as the organization. We got to understand the effects of making changes. Peter Senge had a great quote about that. System thinking is a discipline for seeing wholes. It's a framework for seeing interrelationship rather than things, for seeing patterns of change rather than static snapshots. And when you want to start, the first thing you want to start is getting the buy-in of your teams. That's critical. When we go to project implementations, our clients, many times we hear that, oh, we are different, you don't understand. Nothing is going to work for us. We are different. But when we investigate the effects and we understand the interrelationship and interdependence of all the processes, and we're looking at all the effects, you'll be surprised. Even different industries, different organizations from different industries, they're experiencing very similar effects. So actually, organizations are not that different. The effects they experience are not that different. The long lead times, not enough staff, unreliable equipment, and many more negative effects are very similar. The thing that is different, and every organization is very unique, is the organizational culture. That's why when we do a change, we got to make sure that we achieve the buy-in from our teams. This is the foundation of success for creating a positive change. We need to understand our culture. We need to understand what our employees want. And when we start with the change process, everybody in the organization, when implementing change, need to be able to answer why we're doing the change. So we need to be able to answer what to change to and how to cause the change. Because if we decide to implement a change and we didn't get the buy-in of our teams, it can be very dangerous for the change to be successful, for us to be able to achieve organizational excellence, shorten lead times, ship more stuff out of the door. And at the same time, if the change is not the right change, we're just going to demoralize our staff and we'll be experiencing symptoms of cultural issues, just like that. One client we just started an engagement with one client. When we started engagement with one client, they were from industrial refrigeration industry. And the plant manager was extremely frustrated because about a year ago, they invested something like 5 million in a laser cutting operation. It was the first process upstream, this huge laser cutting machine, And why they invested in the first process upstream? Because their thinking was, if we're going to produce more parts in the first process upstream, for sure I'll be able to ship more stuff out of the door at some point. But once again, if we don't understand the interrelationship and the interdependence, sometimes it may not be true. So what happened, it was creating a lot of work in process inventory. When we went to investigate the plant floor, we looked at the first process upstream, great machinery, very fast, and it's cutting those sheets of metal extremely quick. The forklift operators cannot keep up with the laser cutting operation. They need to bring full skid of cut sheet metal to the next operation, which was shakeout. They couldn't keep up. And the plant manager was extremely angry because when we went actually on a tour and he was showing us this machine, the machine was idle. It wasn't producing, and he was extremely angry. So now we're looking at the next process, and there is mountains and mountains of inventory in front of shakeout. So the question is, how would it actually help you to ship more stuff out of the door? What it does is just creating a lot of work in process inventory. And how do you think the people, the teammates that were involved in this project, how do you think they felt when they saw that the results didn't come? They were probably promised some bonus space if we're going to ship more and things like that. But now they're just working harder, but they don't see the results. So that's why we got to make sure that the changes we make are in alignment with our organization. We got to make sure that we all rowing towards the goal together as a team. In this little image over here, do you think if we're going to start improving the second boat, the boat in the bottom, and we're going to improve the fast rower, do you think they're going to even get to the goal? Probably not. So we don't want to be in that situation. We want to have everybody rowing together in a synchronous flow. So what's the goal? What's the goal of an organization? What's the goal of the organization? So we like inherent simplicity. So we don't want a lot of different measurements and things like that. We believe in inherent simplicity. So I'm going to bring three key items. First of all, I'll talk about throughput. What is throughput? Throughput is a rate the system generates money through sales. So basically, throughput is money coming in. Then we have our inventory. Inventory is money invested into things the system intends to sell. Inventory is money in the system. Then we have operational expense. Operational expense, simple terms, money spent to make throughput happen. What's the goal of the organization? The goal of the organization to increase throughput while simultaneously reducing inventory and operational expense. And any initiative of the organization is a productive initiative only if this initiative supports the goal. If this initiative doesn't support the goal, it shouldn't be the initiative to take. Many times when we start engagements, different teammates in this organization have an idea of where the improvement effort should be. If you ask 20 people inside an organization, you might come up with 100 different ideas of where we should improve. When we're looking into those ideas and we go through our organizational workshop, none of those ideas are the ones we really should focus on. Because you got to understand, when you ask a manager at a certain department, they would think in a perspective of their department. But we need to see the whole. Maybe you'll be able to make if you take those ideas, maybe you'll be able to make this department much more efficient. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the system will be effective. Remember, efficiency doesn't mean effectiveness. keeping every resource busy not necessarily means that the resource is being productive. So where should we improve? If we look at our organization, of all the processes within the organization, in every organization, one process would be a constraining operation, meaning that the flow through this process is less than the flow from the other processes. That is the process that we want to keep extremely busy, extremely efficient. That is the one process we want to keep efficient. Moreover, I would say, to have the system functioning effectively, most of the processes inside the system must be inefficient. This way we'll have extra capacity. We would know we have extra capacity in every of the other processes. So if we go back to my story, once we settled the noise, once we establish priority in the plant, because that's the first thing you need to do. When you have mountains of inventory everywhere, it's really hard to identify the constraint. I just said identify the constraint. So when we go about our practice, we focus on 5 focusing steps. That's how we are able to understand where the organization should focus on. And the first step is identify the constraint. So we need to identify the process that is a constraining operation. But in this situation that I just described, my story, obviously there was a lot of noise. There was no prioritization. The measurement was wrong. So we have to align all those things. I'm not going to be talking about it too much today. That's another workshop. But what we did, we established the flow, we cleared up the noise, and we established priority. Now we are able to identify the constraint. And the constraint was the heat treatment operation. That was a constraint. What it means, that's the pacemaker of the entire organization. How much stuff we can push through this constraint, that's how much stuff the organization is going to ship. That's how critical. Now we are focused. Now we know that initiative here, if we improve this constraint, we are able to ship more stuff out of the door. So that's where we really need to start using our methodologies. How can we improve the flow? So now let me give you a little story about that operation. So it starts with the oven, Ostemper oven. It goes through an oven on a belt. Then it goes to an operation when there is 5 robots. The 5 robots picking up the metal pieces and bringing it to laser treatment. The problem was that when the robot is bringing it to the laser treatment, it drops it back on the belt that it picks it up from. Instead of putting it on a different conveyor, it drops it back. And they call it retry rate. Retries. The retry rate was between 30 to 60%. So about half, 1 in 2, it will be a successful operation of lasering. To make matters worse, it was COVID, remember? One of the robots broke down, had to be shipped back to Germany. So now they're already working with 20% less capacity because there is only 4 robots instead of 5. And the Germans couldn't even tell us when it would be delivered back. It actually took 6 months. So by the time the project was done, we got the robot. Great. However, we knew we can improve the constraint operation significantly. So that's where we start focusing. And we are strong believers in cross-functional teams. We are not scientists of how to send people to Mars. We are believing in inherent simplicity and common sense. And we know that the knowledge is in the operation. We know that the operators on the floor probably have the knowledge of why things are happening. So we believe in a cross-functional team. And we assemble a cross-functional team consists of continuous improvement, maintenance, engineering, operators, and a supervisor. And we start brainstorming. What we call it is a FEMA, failure mode analysis. So we start analyzing what's going on, why it's going wrong. We understood that the positioning of the robot where it's supposed to pick up the piece is out of adjustment. Not really out of adjustment. They made a change upstream in forging. Nobody communicated this change. There was a slight change to the steel. And obviously, now we need to adjust the robot. Nobody did it. Exposure was out of adjustment. And also, we put some preventive maintenance, as simple as just cleaning the robot lens so the robot can see. Once a week, they were cleaning the lens. That was a preventive maintenance. Very simple. Nobody was doing it. And they had issues with it for many months. Just from simple things like that, we were able to improve. But we didn't stop there. The preventive maintenance, the maintenance manager told, we asked about preventive maintenance. So the maintenance manager told us, we do preventive maintenance only when something breaks. That's not really preventative to me. So we made sure that we have 100% preventive maintenance on this piece of equipment. And the preventive maintenance manager told us, wow, I've been in this company for over 30 years. I never felt such synchrony between the different departments. And he said, now we're 100% preventative. Now we got a different problem. The constraint operation was so efficient, was so effective, that the constraining operation couldn't keep up. Sorry, the plant couldn't keep up with the constraint operation. Now remember, if it's a constraint, by nature, it has less capacity than the plant. But because we made it so efficient, it was outpacing the plant at some point, so we didn't have enough work in process inventory before the operation. In our methodology, we want to have a safety capacity of about 20% more stock at all times in front of the constraining operation. That wasn't the case. So what did we do? Before I tell you what we did, we went to the second focusing step, exploiting the constraint. Once we exploited the constraint, we were able to reduce the error rate. Remember I told you it was 30 to 60%? The error rate went under 1%. We introduced proactive maintenance in place. 100% preventative. And equipment reliability was increased like never before. So now when the constraint is outpacing the plant, it's a huge problem for us. What do we do? Where do we look? What is the next focusing step? Sorry. What is the next focusing step? Can anybody tell me what is the next focusing step? So the third focusing step would be subordination. Subordinate the plant to the pace of the constraint. We gotta start looking somewhere else. We gotta start looking why the constraint has not enough capacity in front of it. Because remember I told you, the constraint by definition has less capacity than the plant. So we know 100% that we can expose much more hidden capacity in our other processes in the system. So we're gonna have to start looking upstream. What's wrong with the processes upstream? Because we know they have more capacity, but why they're not providing this inventory to the constraint? And that's exactly what we did. We got to identify the hidden capacity in the other processes to fulfill the needs of the constraint. So when we looked upstream, we looked at the forging department. The forging department is the very first process upstream. And they had an issue. They were kind of dropping bubbles on the plant floor. Bubble after bubble of inventory. So in the forging department, there is 4 different processes. They have forging, then it goes to an oven operation. After that, it goes to jet blast, then it goes to restrike. The problem was that after restrike, it goes to machining. However, the forge operation will, let's say, do 120,000 in a week, but the restrike only does 60,000. Or sometimes vice versa. The forging does 60,000, then Ristrike is pushing out all the stuff that was built up before. Huge problem. So they're dropping bubbles on the plant floor for machining. Big chaos. At the same time, there was no organization of which or work orders are where. So they will produce this, they will forge as much as possible to those stubs, and nobody knew where is the inventory sitting. So what we did, we incorporated visual management in place. Those stubs that you're going to be using are strictly for the forging department. They don't go anywhere else. This way we can easily identify what's normal condition looks like and what's abnormal condition looks like. So that when you go on your Gemba walks, when you assess the situation with the management team, you can say, okay, the situation looks normal, the situation looks abnormal. We were able to standardize the place and break records. We created processes with the Forge team. We created new processes of how we're going to manage the flow. This way, we were able to achieve results like never seen in the company before. We were weekly, we were shipping 40% more, at least 40% more than the company ever seen before. And this way, we were able to keep a safety stock of 20% in front of the constraint. So in short, that is the impact of focus. When we're focusing on things we need to do, when we focus on things we need to do, we're creating a successful change. And what's limiting the focus is the management attention. Like I said, when we have day-to-day, we have so many firefighting activities to deal with. We go on a plant floor and there is so many other issues, and then the customers are screaming. Who is going to scream the loudest? That's the priority. It's really hard to focus our attention. Then COVID hit us with all the other disruptions, and now the focus is not there. So when we work on projects, there are two things. We need to focus on things we should do, but at the same time, we also need to know which things we should not focus on. And this is huge. So when we subordinated everything to the constraint, we were able to increase shipments by 40%. We improved the flow through the entire plant. You can see the flow. We had comments like, I can actually see the work order flowing. It's unbelievable. For a company that's sitting on 15 weeks of production lead time, to be able to actually see the flow, it means we probably significantly improved our lead time. We actually improved it to 9 days. And I was talking to the VP of operations actually a few weeks ago, and he told me that now if we need to, we can do from raw material to finished good in 3 days. I mean, that's only for exceptions if the clients really need it, but their standard lead time is 9 days, from 15 weeks to 9 days. So let's just think of hypothetical situation, the impact of focus. So let's say an organization sales are measured as 100%. That's the sales today. Let's say the TVC, the total variable cost of the material, is 30%. The throughput would be 70%. We're looking at sales money minus material, 70% throughput. Let's say the profit of the organization is 5%. This way we can know that the operational expense is 65%. Now, when we work with clients, the first thing we ask is, do you think you have enough sales in your pipeline if we improve you by X amount of percent? Well, I said 20, 30, 40%. Usually the answer we get, oh yes. If we can improve right now, I can easily ship more. No problem. The problem is I'm not able to ship right now. So conservative measurement, let's say we increase our sales by 20%. The material will increase also by the same amount because now we need to use more material. So 36%. Makes our throughput 84%. Operational expense stays at 65% because, like I said, we're using the same resources. We just using them a little differently. What it does to the net profit? Almost ×4. And that's the impact of focus. When we're focusing in the right areas and putting our change efforts in the areas that matter to the system, and we understand the interrelationship between all the processes, the impact on everybody in our organization is huge. I mean, you as manufacturers, what do you want? You want to fulfill the needs of your customers, you want to increase your profit, you want to provide a safe and rewarding environment for your employees. We are able to increase our profits, I'm sure we will be able to do all of this. So what was the impact of the project with that specific manufacturer? We reduced lead time from 15 weeks to 9 days. We transitioned their maintenance department from reactive maintenance, where remember the comments were, oh, we're only doing preventive maintenance when something breaks. That is out of the window. Now we're actually doing proactive maintenance. Well, probably the last month or so, the project, we're sitting down with the maintenance team. So are you busy right now? You're saying, no, I'm just doing working on preventive maintenance. How can I increase equipment's reliability? That's a project you want your maintenance manager to work on. Not how to react to different equipment breakdowns in the plant. So equipment reliability obviously went up significantly. Weekly shipments, 40% increase. So they have such thing, remember I told you performance pay for employees? We've seen even 300% increase, but to be on a conservative side, period to period, it's about 200%. Oh, they had such a thing, mandatory overtime on Saturdays. That was really a way to motivate your employees, right? You have to work Saturday, sorry. Especially during December. We eliminated it, it's not mandatory anymore. Actually, 2021, with all the disruptions and things like that, it's unbelievable. They gained so much market that it was because everybody had the same issues in 2021. It's not like only it's them, everybody having the same issues. But because they were able to transition their business, it was their best year. And 2022, that's exactly what we want. We put them on a complete continuous improvement cycle. For us, success means success for our clients. When we walk out of the organization, we don't want things to go back the way they used to be. We want them to continuously improve and succeed. And that's exactly the cycle they're on right now. And I bet this year will be their best year again. Now, I only told you about 3 focusing steps. So a little bit about the 4th focusing step. And it's a very good transition because right after this seminar, Aaron Lane from RND Automation is going to take us on a tour. And he's going to show you the breakthrough that they're experiencing. So the 4th focusing step is decide how to elevate your constraint. Because at a certain time when you're gaining so much market share and you're achieving success, there will be a point where you wouldn't have enough capacity left. And you'll need to invest. And you'll need to decide how to elevate the constraint. The important thing I want to mention too, not sure how many of you are familiar with theory of constraints, but I would like to mention it. Why? Because I think a lot of, Eli Goldratt, when he was developing the theory of constraint, he kind of left a little bit part unfinished, I think. And many people took it the wrong way, what he means about deciding on a constraint in your organization. So now when I read some articles and even some professors in universities are talking about theory of constraint is about continuously moving your constraint. Meaning that one day the constraint is here, different day the constraint is there, then another day the constraint is here, and you're running like a firefight and keep putting down those constraints. That's not what theory of constraint is about. Theory of constraint is about identifying your constraints strategically in your organization, and you want to position it there. You don't want to move it. Unless there is some crazy changes in the way you're operating, you don't want to move the constraint. There is how you strategically position it. You also strategically position it based on how your plant is shaped. There are V-type plants, there are T-type plants, there are A-type plants, and there are I-type plants, VATI. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but based on that, we decide where we want to position the constraint. So you don't want to move it. And once you get to the first step, you decide how to elevate it. And that's when you need to start thinking of investing, but not just because it's the best thing right now on the block. It's because you're strategically positioning, you're strategically planning where to invest and why to invest and how it's going to elevate your business. And the fifth focusing step, it's a funny one. Don't be complacent. Just make sure you're on a continuous improvement cycle. Always make sure you're working with the customer demand. And if there are some significant changes in technology in the industry, make sure you're in tune with that. Okay, so what's my call to action? Connect with us and subscribe. So if you can connect with me on LinkedIn, through brochures you have, I'm sure you can find a way to connect with me. There is also a free ebook. Just scan the QR code with a smartphone. In this ebook, you're going to get a little bit more about our business, what we do, and also about that story I was talking about. You're going to get a little bit more of details about that. If you visit our website, you can subscribe to our blog. Every week we have different newsletters. Reach out for consultation. Once again, you can reach me on LinkedIn, reach out for consultation if interested. And we can also do a one-day workshop. So something like I did here, but it usually takes about 8 hours. So with the teams, we're working on a kind of teaching. It's a good training for your teams on organizational excellence. Okay? Thanks.